Welcome to the Aussie Gaming Podcast, where we talk all things Australian football. Coming up on this episode, Ange Postecoglou shares some home truths about Spurs. Mohamed Toure is settling into his new home at Norwich, while Melbourne City are home and hosed, qualifying for the last 16 of the ACL Elite. The Jets make it 7 in a row. Sydney FC find some form and the youngest ever goal scorer in the A-League women. And we'll finish off with our team of the week. I've got Mopper here with me. How are you, mate?
Good evening, everyone. What another busy week in football, and a lot of Australians across the board making headlines for all different reasons this week.
Yeah, that's right, Mopper. Probably the biggest headline of the week was Ange Postecoglou appearing on the Stick to Football podcast. It was a rare public appearance from Ange since he got sacked by Nottingham Forest, but it just so happened to be on the day that Thomas Frank, his successor at Tottenham Hotspur, was sacked as well. So he was able to share some opinions and some insights on his time at Spurs, and there was certainly some revelations that he brought to light on his time at Spurs, wasn't that, mate?
Yeah, absolutely, and it was great to get some insights. We don't often hear too much of the story, do we? And Ange told it how it was, as he always does, and you could sense in his voice and the passion for it that he has for the game over there that he's still got unfinished business, and probably a bit of frustration too, because obviously he would want to have proved everyone wrong, and he would have thought the European trophy would have done that. But clearly it hasn't in some pairs of views over there in the media. But I think when you peel everything back, there's some really clear points and structural points from Tottenham themselves that they've got to work through, because obviously it's derailing some of the great work that is being done over there. So there's a real instability, isn't there, with Tottenham? And it's not just in Ange's time. It's been like that for a very long time, the instability and the infrastructure of the medium of the directors of football and at the top. And everyone's pointing the fingers, everyone's getting emotional about it, and it's done is put themselves in the position that they're in now. And I think, yes, okay, the head coach has to run the football team, but I think there's a lot more issues than just that masks the real deep root causes of that football club.
Yeah, there was certainly some big quotes that came out of it. I'm just going to go through a few of them now. First one, they've built an unbelievable stadium, unbelievable training facilities, but when you look at their expenditure and particularly their wages structure, they're not a big club. Now, this particularly the end a bit of that quote, they're not a big club. This is the part that got picked up a lot. But when you really strip it back and think about it, what's the definition of a big club? It's one that's consistently successful, wins trophies, can attract the big name players, and you can sense that Ange in his thoughts there are pretty validated, really. Speaking of validation, do you think that the fact that Thomas Frank has been sacked so early into his tenure with Spurs, is that validation that Ange should have been given more time after his Europa League victory?
Oh, look, Ange is on a prestigious list, and it's key coaches sacked after European glory. Robert Di Matteo, he was sacked by Chelsea after winning the Champions League. Sarri was sacked by Juventus after success. Jupp Heynckes at Bayern Munich was sacked after the Champions League, and Vincent Del Bosque after winning La Liga. They're big names, aren't they? And it's extraordinary if you win a European trophy that you'd be terminated from your position. And that was clarified that he thought that was in January and February because no one was talking about pre-season or transfers. It's just extraordinary because obviously it didn't matter where they finished that year as long as they survived. They made the goal, which was Champions League. It doesn't matter how you do it, whether you finish second, third, fourth or fifth or win a European trophy. We've seen other clubs do that before. Liverpool's had to win the Champions League final to get in Champions League next year. And it's just that same path. Like I said, if you peel it back and if you look at when he first started, he took over a side that finished 8th. So there was no European football in his first year that he actually coached. So he had what other clubs have now is free shots at probably 8 or 9 teams that are constantly doubled up every week. And it's a massive advantage now because of the congestion in the fixture list. And what it unmasks is everyone's wondering why so many injuries. Well, the root cause probably is in their transfer policy. They transfer young. If I look at the last 30 signings that they've made, the majority are in the under 21s. So if you're playing under 21s week in, week out, 2 games a week, 3 games a week, their body isn't prepared for that. And obviously the injuries curtail. And I think it relates to his other point around the transfer market in not getting ready-made players that are high level and fit. Now, that's a transfer strategy that Spurs has done for a very long time. And yes, he would have been fully aware of it, like it's been pointed out. But that's the kind of key differences when you look at the injuries and who you're buying, that if they can't cope with the demands of a week in, week out, double 2 to 3 games, then of course you're going to pick up injuries. They had a free hit in this first year and they come fifth. And incredibly, after everybody knows of Harry Kane leaving. But it just hasn't been Harry Kane that's left. Daniel Levy's left. Son's left. Ange has left. There's so much instability. And then you go up to the next level. New CEO, new director of football. Now there was 2, now there's 1. It's just, how do you create a proper business plan with structure that's going to actually format right through your club? And all this instability creates player unrest. You've seen it this year. Yeah, the amount of Romero speaking out again in regards to his frustration. The fans completely frustrated by the lack of stability because there's no inconsistency in that ethos that he talked about, which was dare to do, which is a great ethos to have. But again, you got to back it up. You make statements, you got to back it up, and that's the challenge. But the instability is the unearthing of Tottenham's problems. But don't forget also too, a lot of people look at the running of the business, that Tottenham around $750 million in debt, and they have built this beautiful stadium and have great facilities that a lot of people talk about, which is fantastic. But the challenge with that as a business is that you're going to be financially restricted. Wage structures, certain expenditure, you can't go after the big market because you've got to balance it. Now, they should know that because their fellow competitors, that their fierce rivals, Arsenal, went through the same scenario back in 2006 when they opened their new stadium. And what happened? They were competing for the title, and then it all dropped off as soon as the new stadium came in because finance started to get tight. And they started dropping to 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th until they had to rebuild back in like 2022, where you've seen Arteta's reign, where they started to rebuild and financially got under control. They're about debts now of around 300 million, but face the same challenges. So yes, the infrastructure looks great, but it's going to pay the price and the finances, and that balance that they're trying to find just hasn't happened. And the instability has just created this volcano of activity of coach after coach after coach, director after director, CEO, or I should say, of football and vice versa. And it's just mounted their challenges, and it's all blown up now. And they're facing the real reality of relegation now, probably for the first time. Now, you could probably say, well, you wouldn't expect it, but neither did West Ham and Villa a few years ago, did they? And they went down and had to go through all that turmoil. So great points by Ange. His feedback, he's put himself out there, so credit to him. And obviously, when you put yourself out there, you're going to cop criticism, you're going to crop acknowledgement, you're going to crop a lot of things, positive and negative. So it was a brave decision to air it, but we know Ange. He talks honest, he tells the truth, and he was just giving his perspective. And obviously, some parts of the media over there, especially the ones you talked about, are very negative, but they're part of the problem. They're not part of the solution. So I thought it was great listening to it, get another perspective. And I understand all points in this argument, because if you peel everything back, it's more than just the face of football.
Yeah, some of that criticism that you spoke of, Jamie O'Hara, who has been a very vocal critic of Ange Postecoglou, kind of mixed reaction. Agreed with some points, but was quite negative on some of the other points that Ange brought up as well. But British broadcaster Andy Goldstein was really in on Ange for sure. So he called him the worst Spurs manager in 50 years. and said he'll never get another Premier League job. So, yeah, very harsh words from Andy Goldstein. He was particularly critical of Ange not taking any responsibility for what happened at Spurs. But I think, in a format like that, it's not like the questions that were posed to him didn't really give him the opportunity, or it would have sounded a bit strange for Ange to then come out and take ownership. It was more just about them trying to understand what was happening behind the scenes. So, yeah, very interesting situation how it all unfolded out there, and the fact that Ange said, he was pretty much knew he was gone in January, which even makes those those wordings in the celebrations post Europa League win. He knew he was gone, so he throws these lines out there. So, yeah, typical kind of Ange. But look, we both expect him to see him in a role pretty high up in Europe, certainly sometime in the near future. It may not be in the Premier League straight away, but maybe a good thing to step away from it. But yeah, good to hear from him and hear his insights. And yeah, look, Spurs are in a world of trouble. They probably were in a similar position last year in terms of ladder position, but as Ange said, I think they finished 13 points clear of relegation. So no chance were they actually going to go down. But this season, very different. So, yeah, very, very interesting to hear from Ange. And, yeah, for all those Spurs fans out there, fingers crossed for you that it actually turns around, because it hasn't been good for quite some time, and it's definitely not looking good this season.
Yeah, they've got some challenges, but again, there's untapped potential, and they may just have to go through the fruition while they get these financial debt to a manageable level before they really step it up and try to be a big club. They are a big club, but not the biggest. And, they're mid-range, and that's where their trophy count is. That's where their financial situation is. So, yeah, there's always going to be hope for a club like this because they've got other things right within the business structure. It's just a bit untapped at the moment and hasn't got the right balance. But yeah, it's interesting how people criticise without the facts that he's the worst manager. Well, the facts don't say that. So it's an emotional statement, and and I know it was relating to the Premier League, and it wasn't a good performance. And we all know as a coach you've got to make decisions, and that was Ange, and he'll stand by that. And Goldstein's within his right as a pundit professional. That's where he is as well, to stand by his comments. But you wouldn't be complaining, Spurs fans, after when they appointed him, they were crying out just for one bare trophy. They don't care what it was, but then they got it. But then everything, they're still well, I wouldn't say the majority of fans are still unhappy, but the minority of fans will, never satisfied with what they get, are they? Like, why would you want a Europa trophy and Champions League on your menu? But anyway, everyone's different, I guess, in the way they feel about where the club's at, and no doubt the frustration of the Premier League is driving that for the fans. And but look, I still look at some of the players they've got at the age that they're at, and we've seen them produce many talents that have gone on to bigger things, and that's Spurs' challenge, isn't it, to try to retain that talent. But yeah, they've had many moments in time where they've had the ability, but yeah, unfortunately for Spurs fans, it's been a bit up and down. But future still looks bright for me, and Ange, I think, will get a job anyway. There's not many managers on the CV that says they've got a European trophy, and all his record speaks for itself. So we wish him all the best, and we just thank his honesty. And however it's perceived, it's just good to hear coach come out and manager come out and tell us what really their thoughts are on the opinion.
All right, mate, enough about Spurs. Let's talk about Mo Toure, because I'm pumped up because he has done it again. 5 goals in 3 games, 5 goals in 130 minutes of action for Mohamed Toure in his time at Norwich City. He scored in stoppage time this morning, which is part of his 29 minutes off the bench. He was involved in the build-up for the goal. He continued his run and scored a header from a couple of yards out. Ended up being a 3-1 win for Norwich over West Brom in the FA Cup 4th round. But an absolutely incredible start for Mohamed Toure. Some of the goals have been tap-ins, let's be honest, but you've got to put yourself in the areas, and what a rich vein of form this kid's in at the moment.
Well, you demanded it midweek, didn't you? Another response, didn't you? You demanded more goals, so
Yes.
you got what you wanted, and
Yes.
and twice off the bench. He's only started once, so Yeah, it's a fantastic story, and yeah, for well it may continue. This young fella's on a trajectory, and it's just great to see our Australian players performing well. That was in the FA Cup this morning, so a great result there for Norwich, 3-1 win over West Brom. So fantastic. They'll be in the fifth round, and hey, Mo might be up against some Premier League opposition next, which will be even more exciting, testing his ability.
Yeah, good to get on that big stage as well. And what about this stat that came out from the X account NCFC numbers? Mohamed Toure is the first Norwich City player for 117 years to score 5 goals in his first 3 appearances for the club since William Rayner in 1909. So Big Mo is breaking records already in his time at Norwich City, and may well it continue. And we look forward to watching on for his continued performances at Norwich City. And I think the way that they're managing him is really, really good. So he got, 30 minutes in his first game. He got 60 in his second, back to another 30. I think, they would realise the injury concerns that he's had in the past, and they're really managing him very well. And he's still scoring goals with his opportunities. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I even seen funny on X, they had Haaland stats and Toure's stats, and Toure was better. So, wow, that was just already comparing best of the best. Yeah, like I thought, wow, that's a huge comparison to compare against Haaland. But hey, we'll take it.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about a bit more action in England. Portsmouth suffer a home defeat at the death, going 1-0 to Sheffield United. This is Pompey, only 1 point above relegation. In the game, Adrian Segacic started and played 77 minutes as his team are suffering a deep injury crisis, which of course includes a couple of our Aussies. They do have 2 games in hand though, but yeah, it's getting pretty tight towards the end of the season. One of our other clubs picked up a big win, though, in Blackburn under their new coach, Michael O'Neill. Lewis Miller was on the bench and came on in the 46th minute, but only lasted 8 minutes as a bad injury, possibly his Achilles. Some reports are saying could be a devastating blow. His side, though, did pick up a crucial 3-1 win over QPR, which now sees Rovers, after winning 2 or 3, moving away from the relegation zone. On the QPR side, Australian Daniel Benny played 69 minutes. Keely Adamson was an unused sub for QPR. But Moffat, this is a huge blow for Blackburn, obviously. But if it's an Achilles, that's definitely Lewis Miller's World Cup done. And it's probably a position that's pretty open once we look past Lewis Miller. Who do you think some options might be if Miller ends up missing the World Cup?
Well, if we look at next generation, maybe a bit early, but Benny and Overy would be the next generation in age bracket. But you've also seen Italiano play there, Karadzic played there, or you've got the option if we want to do what we did on the left-hand side, like a central defender on the left, like Rolls, you've got Degenak, Sakati have all played in that right-hand side position. So I don't think they want Sakati out of the middle or that right-sided, but obviously you pointed out Kai Truan as well. So got plenty of options, not the type of profile player that we'd want to lose because Lewis Miller plays this position week in, week out. But we've got some depth. It'll be interesting to see what happens, whether it's in March window, do we see the next generation get an opportunity because we've already seen the others that we spoke about. But there's definitely quite a lot of options there on the right side. Just probably not the prototype of Lewis Miller, but like I said, if Popovic is looking what Rolls did on the left, don't be surprised if he does that on the right because a lot of, Man City, Arsenal, they play 4 central defenders across the back now. They don't even really have natural fullbacks or wing backs. So that may be a potential option for Popper, but there's plenty of options there. What do you think?
Yeah, I am. My probably initial thought was an Italiano or a Karadzic. I really like Overy as a player, but I do just wonder at the level that he's playing at the moment. Could he be relied upon in such a big opportunity at the World Cup? Not like I believe he's got the talent, but it would be a big call from Tony Popovic to bring Overy in. So I'm probably thinking it's more of an Italiano or Karadzic, but I hadn't until you mentioned it this afternoon. I hadn't really thought about that option of, as you said, similar to what he's done with Rolls on the left, almost playing that 4 centre backs and then having an outlet. But it may end up working out okay if he does it that way too. But I thought Truan on that kind of the furthest of the right players could be an option there. Yeah, I think it's definitely not a like for like replacement if Popper's looking to bring in a Miller type. So I think, yeah, he's really got to maybe switch things up. It's going to be a big blow for the Socceroos, unfortunately. Let's hope it's not serious as first reported, but I'm sure we'll hear in the next couple of days how bad it is, and then obviously we'll be able to look at options from that point.
What about left field? Throw this one out there. Geordie Boss comes to the right because we've got plenty of options on the left.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, he is that versatile. We have
both
seen him
both 2-footed.
Yeah, we've seen him be played there. Popovic did put him there at one point, didn't he? As a cameo off the bench. Can't remember which game that was now, but yeah, we have seen him as an option there. So yeah, why not? I suppose. Like, yeah, that's definitely something that he could consider.
All right. Well, and our thoughts obviously go out to Miller. Hopefully, we get some news and it's not as bad as what we think. But yeah, we'll wait for that report to come through.
All right, let's continue on in England. Another All-Australian clash sees Derby win 2-0 at home to Swansea. Callum started, played a full game, picked up a nice assist from a corner and 10 defensive contributions, whilst Swansea's Cam Burgess plays a full game. The win puts Derby in sixth spot, right up into those playoff positions, but it's so tight in the championship, isn't it? Swansea, safe 16th around that kind of 2/3 down the table. Watford got a 2-2 away result with Preston. Obviously, Ian Kunda still serving that suspension. Player of the match performance, and he was credited with an assist, Alex Robertson. I say credited because he basically just laid the ball off for his teammate to crack it in from 30 yards. But they picked up a 3-1 win over Luton. They remained first, but importantly, they're 10 points clear of third.
Week Motherwell dominated Rangers, and it was strange because Motherwell were down to 10 men, and they got a late goal with 10 men to rescue a 0.1-all with Rangers as Oscar Priestman plays the second half, and Johnny Katumbas misses a game due to a calf injury. But an important point Motherwell took off Rangers, and I'm sure all Hearts fans were very happy with that midweek result. Let's go to the weekend's games. And overnight, Dundee United win 3-2 away to Falkirk. Falkirk was sixth place at the start of this day. And it's really good for Dundee because that stops a run of 4 losses on the bounce in the league and gives United a small hope of closing the gap on Falkirk, who are in sixth place. They're 11 points behind, but importantly have 2 games in hand to keep their slim chance alive to break in that top 6 after 33 games. So about 6 weeks to go in Scotland. If we look at the Australian players, we had Zach Sabson played a full game and got an assist. And Ashley Maynard-Brewer continues in goals for Dundee United after signing in January. And he made a couple of good saves, but he did concede 2. Ryan Strain also got a full game, which was really important for United as well. So all 3 Aussies performing well for Dundee United and taking the points. Our other Aussies, Hibs, they won 2-0 at home, consolidating 5th spot. Well, this Australian citizen that we found out, Ant Suto, who signed in January, scored the second goal after coming on in the 64th minute. It only took him 2 minutes in this game, and he wrapped the game up 2-0. And a fellow Australian too, want to mention Jack Iredale. He had a great game in the centre of defence, outstanding with 7 defensive contributions, played a full game and kept a clean sheet. And Martin Boyle was on the bench for this one, but come on in the 64th minute with Suto. And obviously they've combined, and Hibs for the 3 Aussies are 2-0 and settled in 5th. And not too far off Motherwell, but it'll be interesting when they break that top 6. They're going to have a big say on the title. They're really good top 6 teams in Scotland this year. So it's going to be very difficult for all 6 clubs when they break up in a few weeks' time. Over in the Netherlands, in Eredivisie, an all-Aussie do-or-die clash at the bottom. Sides are fighting for survival as Aiden Rustic Heracles are at home to Max Ballard's NAC Breda, and it took an 80th minute penalty, which was a handball, to decide this one, as NAC Breda snuck home with a 1-0 away win and leapfrog Heracles to climb to 16th. This leaves Heracles now last in relegation. It was also Brader's first win in the league since the 2nd of November, which was 13 games ago, would you believe? Both Aussies played a full game in a very tense contest. And we also had a debut for Reece Bonoski, who signed in January for Heracles, who come off the bench in the 60th minute. He was their new signing. And, well, Maxi Ballard's Brader, whew, what a game this was. It was tense right down the last minute. And, well, we wish both of them well in the remaining games. Brader's got another couple of relegation contenders to do with next couple of weeks, and we hope Heracles can pick up another win and get themselves out of trouble as well. We'll drop down a division, Eredivisie. Kampioens AD Den Haag pick up a nice 3-0 win. They stay top, but our attacker, unfortunately, is left on the bench. In the Women's Bundesliga, Frankfurt, Haley Russo gets 17 minutes off the bench in her side's 4-0 win over FC Nordsjælland in their first leg of the Women's Europa Cup quarter-final. So that's exciting for Frankfurt. There was also 45 minutes off the bench for Leah Varley as her Nuremberg go down 3-1 to Leisberg. So interesting. We've got Frankfurt in the Europa Cup, and obviously Leah Varley for Nuremberg in the Bundesliga are playing overnight and during the week. In Denmark, we have Randers. They won 2-0, and welcome back to Denmark. Ver Bolka with Paul Izzo keeping a clean sheet with Mohamed Toure getting 6 minutes off their bench. So good 2-0 win there for Enders. Welcome back. Austria, we got 16 minutes for Jed Drew in Hartberg's 0-0 draw with Altec. Jed Drew come off in the 74th minute, as unfortunately this one was a dire draw, but keeps them fifth and keeps them in that top six. In Switzerland, we've seen 80 minutes for Liam Chipperfield as Sion beat his dad's old team, FC Basel. Wouldn't that have been exciting for him? And they beat him 2-0 in a great win for Sion. We pop over to Italy in Serie A for the women. Alex Chidiac scores for Como as her side beat Salisbury 2-0. And Jacinda Galabachi got 21 minutes off the bench for Sassuolo as well. Jess Nash was on the bench, but an unused sub. All right, mate, we go to the midweek ACL Elite. We're after some big results, and we've got a bit of a mixed bag, but we'll start with Kevin Muscat's return in the Champions League. Shanghai Port drew 0-0 with Gangwon FC. They remain winless in the ACL Elite and will not be in the next phase of the competition. But we had a massive win for the Australian team, Melbourne City, who beat Ulsan 2-1 in a pulsating game with goals to Max Caputo with a header from a Marcus Yunus goal in stoppage time volley to book their place in the last 16. They're a different side in Asia, Chief. Yunus has 3 goals in their first 4 games for City, and next up they play Gangwon FC, who are 8th and will be desperate to make the round of 16, and that will be at home this week. On the other flip side, in the ACL2, we would have thought MacArthur would have really taken it to Bangkok, but MacArthur got dominated not only physically but on the ball as well, as they lose 2-0 in their first leg in this round of 16 game. I've seen some highlights of this one, and they'll need to overturn this deficit in the return leg on Thursday. And if you've seen the highlights, some very physical Bangkok team, and probably should have been a couple of red cards if VAR was looking at the action. Mitch Duke copping some bad hits, but Bangkok United, if you get back to the football, they dominated MacArthur. I was very surprised in the way and the manner that Bangkok overrun and overplayed MacArthur Bulls there. It was a very disappointing performance in the first leg. What do you think of that? Can they turn it around?
Yeah, well, they have to, don't they? And they've definitely got the quality. We've seen that in the ACL2 competition this season and in the A-League. We know that when they're at their best, they can really turn it on. But yeah, I don't know whether they underestimated Bangkok, probably not. But as you said, they were just up for it, weren't they? And MacArthur just a bit off the pace and got punished. So yeah, big opportunity here in that round of 16 game. They'll be desperate to make it to the quarterfinals. I mean, 2-0 is not inconceivable to overturn, but they're going to have to definitely turn up, and let's hope that they can do it. On the other side, obviously Melbourne City progressing through is a big advantage for the whole of the game in Australia, because I just wanted to give you a bit of a coefficient update. It appears as though the slots for the 26-27 campaign have already been decided. They must run for the 2025 calendar year, and then points are attributed. So Australia will have again one ACL elite spot and one ACL 2 slot. We are currently 3 points behind China, but if both teams, in terms of the overall, sorry, 3 points behind, but if both teams finish their tournaments well, as in, yeah, obviously Melbourne City is still going to progress in their ACL League competition, and then if MacArthur can at least make quarterfinals, it's going to be a good effort, and then a good start to the 26-27 campaign. We know obviously that the Newcastle Jets will be one of the teams competing, and we're waiting to see who the other one will be. But yeah, we're not that far behind China and then Thailand, who, if we can jump either of those teams or both potentially, we get some more slots in the ACL Elite and the ACL 2 competitions, which would be fantastic for the domestic game. And it just opens up all kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. So massive ramifications with this competition, isn't it? And obviously we have to wait another 12 months, but geez, it'd be well worth it to see a lot of sides, because all it does is bring investment and financial capability, doesn't it? And that's exactly what the A-League clubs need to compete in this environment. And if we're not that far off, and great showing by Melbourne City, fantastic effort. And let's just hope MacArthur can reap the rewards of being at home and can get a goal and really put Bangkok under pressure and hopefully come over the top of them. All right, buddy. Thanks for the update. All right, mate. Let's start with the A-League men. And the first game on Friday night was Wanderers, who drew 2-2 with Phoenix. Well, we've said last week this game could be anything, and it certainly turned out that way, didn't it? Let's go to some of the points that happened on the night. Jacob Farrell started at left centre back, which was interesting. Sarpat Singh starts for the Knicks as well. Ryan Fraser scored his third goal in 4 games, cutting inside on the right and curling into the far post. Very similar to Sydney Derby goal and showing his quality. Philip Kankar then doubled the Wanderers' lead when he took a spectacular shot late in the first half that slipped through the hands of Albie Kelly-Heald and made it 2-0. Jacob Farrell then trips Matthew Sheridan in the box. Referee Adam Kersey says no penalty is called to the monitor of VAR, and Kersey weirdly sticks to his original decision in a very controversial moment, because if you look at it, I just cannot see how he stuck with his original decision. But strange one. The Knicks again thwarted by VAR in this one. Then I sent you a message, Chief, 2-0 up, Wanderers cruising, and I shot down Wellington and their performance, but guess what happened? Bill Tomerell then pulls one back for the Knicks from a set piece, and then they're back in the game. And then just 3 minutes later, somehow the game is level at 2-2 after a long VAR check for offside, and the goal is awarded to Eze, his 8th of the season after a goal-mouth scramble. After 10 minutes of stoppage time due to some head clashes, substitutes, and VAR checks again, the match finally ends, which benefits neither team. And both teams are really going to be shaking their heads again after probably another performance they will not be satisfied with. But the key talking point that we'd like to discuss and throw you over a question, Chief, is the crowd. It was only 4,461, the lowest ever Wanderers home crowd. What does that tell us?
Yeah, I mean, look to the game firstly. The the Wanderers had it in the bag. Barbarouses put one over from about 6 yards out just before Wellington went on and scored. But just the story of their season, they just can't put enough balls in the back of the net to secure these wins. And yeah, the Knicks were dangerous from those set pieces. So yeah, look, the result doesn't help either team really. Both of them needed 3 points to really try and stay with that top 6, but that might be almost it for both of those teams this season. Look, on the crowd, I think it's the reflection of a wider issue with the Wanderers. They haven't had great success for quite some time. I know they did make the finals last year, and they had a quality team, and on their day they could really turn it on, but too inconsistent. And before that, spells have been just haven't been up to the standard. There's obviously been some issues with their active support as well, and Look, I just think that it's going to be a really big off season for the Wanderers. Obviously, Gary Van Egmon's in there as interim coach at the moment. They went through a pretty big player overhaul in the off season. So, do they go and do that again? Do they look to bring in marquees? Do they look to bring in young local Western Sydney talent to try and drive the community and get them behind the team? There's some big questions to answer in the off season. Obviously, Alan Stadich, not only was he head coach of the men's team, but had a pretty significant role, whether it was director of football or football operations or something like that. But he's now gone, so they almost need to start again in that capacity as well. So big challenges ahead for the Wanderers.
Yep, definitely. All right, mate. Let's move on to the next A-League game, which is over in Perth on Friday night as Jets beat Glory 3-1. Talk us through the talking points.
Yeah, you're right about that. So 7 wins in a row for the Jets as they take care of Perth Glory 3-1. Travelled from their game in Adelaide last weekend straight to Perth, arriving on Tuesday. So that was a question that you had last week. You were wondering what they were going to do with that. So they were very well acclimatised and they benefited from that, even though they're in some great form. Anyway, the Jets' starting lineup was unchanged again, while Perth were missing Tom Lawrence and Nicholas Pennington, who between them have scored 9 of Perth's 21 goals this season. Lockie Baylor scored another cracker to open the scoring, receiving from a short corner and curling in from outside the box. What a bit of form that Lockie Bayless is in at the moment. And then his namesake, Lockie Rose, got his 8th of the season. 2 minutes into the second half. Yeah, I'm sure Adam Griffiths would not have been happy about that at all after his halftime team talk. A well-worth short corner again, and he tapped home from a few yards out. Perth's chance to come back took a big blow when Brian Caltech was sent off for denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, bringing down Ben Gibson, and then the X factor off the bench again, Xavier Bertoncello, put the icing on the cake when he thumped home a shot at the far post after being found by Kota Mizunuma. Stefan Kolikovsky, the Energizer Bunny, got a second goal in as many weeks as a Glory consolation, but it was too little, too late. And as I said, the Jets on a 7-match winning streak. That's their club record that they keep extending, but the A-League overall winning record is 10 matches set by the Western Sydney Wanderers in 2013. Mopper, can this on-fire Jets team get the all-time winning streak in a couple of weeks' time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to tell you my valid points why. Macarthur at home after Asian Champions League, I reckon Macarthur, as the impact of that Asian Champions League will take a little toll, especially if this game goes the distance and maybe even injury time midweek. They got them at home. So I think it's perfect timing to play Macarthur. Then they go to the derby against Mariners, which I think they'll be too strong for. And they have the Wanderers who are all over the place at home again. And then they've got the big one, which I think probably is the 50-50 game, is the Auckland game at home, which will be the biggest challenge. So I definitely think that they're on the winning streak and it will continue and it will come down to the Auckland game.
Well, they've
What are your
beaten
thoughts?
Auckland twice this season, haven't they? So they might not have too much of an issue, but no, that definitely looks like the biggest challenge in that run of games. But look, they can definitely do it. They're in a good run of form, and they look pretty unstoppable at the moment. Just so entertaining to watch, and I think there's just so much expectation on their performances as well as their results at the moment. So very interesting. One of the keys to their success of late has been Maxi Burgess. Mark Milligan suggested that he wouldn't be able to place in a Socceroos jersey after his change of position into a 6 in their kind of 4-1-4-1 formation. So what do you think? No, we've got plenty of options at the 6, but he would definitely offer something a bit different.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Milligan knows him the best. Oh, look, I wouldn't think he's at that level, but yeah, look, you won't know until he's tried out in that area. He had a long injury layoff, didn't he, which has probably gone against him. But before that, if you think back to the Hahn Cup, he really led this side, didn't he? So you've got to take that into consideration. And when your coach is singing your praises like that, especially because he has only been back for a short time, well, what And Popper said he'd keep picking them for people to have opportunities, but I think it might become a bit too late leading into the World Cup. But definitely after, Maxi Burgess, if he stays with the Jets, he's going to get exposure in Asia, which will be perfect for him to lift that next platform. So, and the Asia Cup's coming up after the World Cup next year. So that I think will be the perfect scenario for him.
Let's not forget, Mopper, too, that a certain chief over here selected Maxi Burgess as the Johnny Warren medalist for our
Yes, you did.
preseason predictions. So I'm very happy to see him come into the form and make a late run for that Johnny Warren medal.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. Look, we wish him all the best. It's not to say it'll divide opinions, no doubt, but he's been an absolute positive stalwart leading into that Hahn Cup, and he really has led that way, and he's shown his potential making that move across from Sydney FC. He's a new player, isn't he? He's been given that responsibility and leadership, and it's made a hell of a difference for him. So we wish Max Burgess all the best, and hopefully he continues that great form. And yeah, it's recognised at the international level because he definitely deserves a shot. I think in the next 12 months.
All right. On the Perth side, they're now 1 winning 5, and their next 4 are away from home at Adelaide, Brisbane, Auckland, and Wellington. So that really is going to define their season if they can go away from home and, pick up. Definitely Adelaide and Auckland are going to be tough. You think Brisbane is going to be hard to beat, and Wellington, you could be anything over there. So yeah, big 4 games coming up for Wellington, for Perth. Sorry, definitely going to define their season. Let's go to the next game up. Melbourne Victory had a 1-1 draw with Brisbane Roar. Victory missing a couple of players there. Bench looked pretty light on compared to what it has been. Renato Piscopo and Louis Dorigo missed this one. Brisbane's new signing, Marius Lowe, came straight into the starting lineup. And there was a load of space left in behind for Juan Mata to pick out Charles Nduka for his first Melbourne Victory goal as he clipped it over Dean Bizanis. This game was really dominated by the Victory with almost double the accurate passes and 63% possession. But they were wasteful in front of goal and were made to pay late on when their former player, Nick D'Agostino, had some good interplay with Samuel Klein before sliding in to score. The 1-1 draw breaks a 3-game losing streak for the Brisbane Roar, while an inconsistent Victory are 6th and will play against City, who are sitting 7th in the Melbourne derby next weekend. I can't get a read on either of these teams. So, is this a shootout for the last final spot, Whopper?
Oh, that's a big call, but the others are kind of stretching away at the top, probably 2 or 3. But yeah, it's very inconsistent, isn't it? And it's really hard to tell. And well, it's going to come down to that if one of them don't like charge on, and if you're going to leave yourself open, it could well come down to it. And it'd be an absolute shock if these two don't make the finals. But no one's taken that initiative, are they? And yeah, what a contest this is going to be. Like 6th and 7th, it's almost like do or die, and it's only February. So look at and interesting contrast. Yeah, Victory took the points off when City were going better the last game, and then vice versa in the first game. So it's bound to be a 4-4 draw.
All right, let's go to the late game on Saturday. Only 4 LA games this weekend with obviously those commitments through Asia. So this one promised to be a really good game, and it turned out to be that. Unfortunately, the pitch wasn't great, which I'll touch on in a bit. But Sydney FC's new recruits, Ahmed Arslan and Apostolos Stamatolopoulos, started on the bench while Joe Lawley was in the starting 11. Adelaide started life without the injured Craig Goodwin, but they were able to welcome back Ethan Alagich, who had a brilliant game in the midfield for Adelaide. The informed Tiago Quintal put Sydney FC up after putting the ball through Josh Smith's legs. The Dutch goalkeeper failed to clear a dodgy back pass from Bart Vriens, and it ended up landing to Tiago Quintal, who finished that one nicely. Brian Kiddo, though, got one back for the visitors not long later after some nice interplay down the right, and Jay Barnett put an early ball into the box to find Kiddo, who contorts his body and puts it in. It was an end-to-end battle, plenty of chances at both ends, a bit like a basketball game, mate, just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. In the second half, Arslan and Stamslopoulos were introduced for Sydney FC. And geez, there was a 5 minute or 6, 7 minute period after that they just created chance after chance, but couldn't convert it. Adelaide was sitting deep, but looking very dangerous on the break. And that's where the winner came from, actually, when Brody Burkett played in Luka Ivanovic, who drove a goal, and his shot was deflected off Tisserand and slipped past Devonish Mears. A bit of a howler from Devonish Mears, to be honest. And it was really unfortunate for him because he'd had a really good game up to that point. But the win moves Adelaide up to third, while Sydney FC are fourth ahead of their big clash with second place Auckland on Tuesday night. Geez, mate, what are your predictions for that game? What's going to happen?
Well, Sydney FC looked good in patches, didn't they? And Adelaide looked good. Oh, they always entertain with some beautiful football, and the game opened up. My prediction for Tuesday night is I think Auckland will win again, just due to the freshness. They'll be over here fresh. They haven't played the weekend, and they're gonna be primed for this. And the last game they played was against Sydney, and they beat them. Sydney FC did look strong though when they made those substitutes, but I thought they were just ready to kick on when they made those subs. But for some, football trend, the last 10, 15 minutes, it was really dominated by Adelaide, which was really strange. It was really dominating each pieces in quarters this game. But I definitely think with Auckland being fresh, they're going to have a fresh shot at them. Hopefully a good crowd, but yeah, definitely Adelaide serious contenders is more my question to you, because I think Auckland and Sydney FC is going to be another cracker on Tuesday night. If you watched that one last week with those two teams, it's going to be deserving of another full house, and hopefully some people get out there because it's going to be a cracking contest. But are Adelaide serious contenders? That's the question I'm going to throw back to you.
Yeah, I think they could be. I mean, lock them in for a final spot, I'd say at this stage. Craig Goodwin's a big miss, I think, for them. Not
Mm.
just for his technical ability, but his experience. So I really think that the likes of Smits, Ryan Kiddo, Bart Breens, they're really going to have to step up and lead this team around, because it is a young, talented squad. But what happens with young talent is that they can be inconsistent. So you look at Jovanovic, Cooley, even the defense as well. Like there's like inexperience. Like Alagic isn't that old. Ryan Wyatt, like they're such talented players, but the thing is that they are going to have good games. They are going to have bad games, and it's how they're going to respond in those bad games and whether they can beat themselves up. We know they're strong at home as well. This is a big victory away from home for them against one of the better teams in the competition as well. So, look, they're definitely in the finals mix. I can't see them challenging for the Premier's plate, but they'll be dangerous in the finals. Not many teams are going to want to face up against Adelaide United come finals time.
Yeah, they're an exciting brand, aren't they? And last talking point, and probably the most disappointing of the night, the pitch. It was very bad after a Super Rugby game the night before. Chief, we're 4 weeks in since the resurfacing, and I understand that there's three tenors of the Allianz Stadium, and that is rugby union, rugby league, and football, soccer. They all need three different levels of grass, and if this nearly caused serious injury at the end of the game too, as a couple of players lost their footing. This is a serious issue, and I'll touch on another point after I get your thoughts on it, because there was some advertising that I'll touch on after I hear your comments on the pitch.
Oh, look, visually it looked horrible with that kind of big patch straight through the middle. For Sydney FC as a tenant, they've had one game this season that's been like the pitch had to be relayed because of it being waterlogged. And I think they've only had one game. I think it was against Wellington, and now they get served this up, and then they're going to have to, with the Super Rugby season and the NRL season not too far away. Now they're going to have to have this challenge week in, week out, of whether they're playing on a surface that's chopped up or relayed or patched up in different areas. So it's just so disappointing for Sydney. So they should have had several home games. They always knew that the back end of the season was going to be challenging in terms of the seasons overlapping with the other codes, but they deserve the full run at Allianz Stadium this year, and it's just so disappointing for them that they haven't got it. But look, you know, we say it a lot, but the better or the quicker we can get to football purpose venues, and if that is a possibility, the better, because whether it's a concert or whether it's another code, we just can't have footballers playing on this. And as you mentioned, because you know it brings in injury into play, and it's just really unfortunate. And I feel really bad for the players. And credit to them for putting on such a good show on a pitch like that last night.
Yeah, Sydney FC to me have to rethink this one next year. They were obviously distracted in the first half with the drainage problems. Then they had moved out to Leichhardt. They had problems with their pitch, had to be relayed. Then they've come back to Allianz, and only after 4 weeks have served up this. Now, I going back to a program that was aired on Sydney Weekender, and I happened to be with the family at the time, and they said, "Oh, have a look at this." Sydney Weekender was showing off Allianz Stadium, and I looked at the pitch and I said, "That doesn't look like the pitch to me." I don't think they've seen last night's game, and it was an awful, after advertising that on TV nationally and then producing that on Paramount and Channel 10, the pitch is an absolute disgrace. And I seriously, that whether it's the scheduling or just the pitch maintenance or whatever, they've been let down big time. And this is a national issue for the A League because you're going to hurt the product, which is the players. And you've seen those injuries laid on with the pitch and divoted up and chunks in. And, I think it was Quintala had the worst one. And it's just not good enough. And it's going to cause serious injury. And it's dead set. Someone needs to take responsibility with this one and either play in or play out and move to another venue, because you can't allow our football talent and our product that are on show to play on that pitch. It's not safe. But anyway, bigger issue for the A-League there. We'll wrap that up. Thanks for that A-League wrap, mate. Let's go into the Ninja A-League women. The Wanderers draw 1-0 with the Jets. They've bounced back in the last few weeks, the Wanderers. They've had some good results. And Talia Yunus scored in the first minute of this one. What a week for Yunus siblings, eh? It just runs in the family, football, my friend. And Melina Ayres, though, equalises for the Jets, making it 2 wins in her past 3 games. So that was a good result there. So 1-1 draw. The spoils were shared. Sydney FC beat Brisbane Roar 4-0, and what a bounce back for Sydney. They've had a bit of struggle town, but in your pre-notes there, mate, I've seen you bounce up because we've got some exciting news. Sydney's first win in 11 games. That's 82 days. First away goals of the season, and goal scorers were none other than Willa Pearson, the youngest ever A-League women's scorer at 15, just beat Sam Kerr's record. What a story that was, and a beautiful interview after. Sky Helmrich obviously scored on her 18th birthday too. We all know the potential of young Sky. And Brisbane were dealing with a horrible injury toll and some signings, lost some key players in the transfer window. They were missing Tamika Yallop, Shane Ferrer and Grace Callum, one of the younger stars of the Ninja A-League. So a big win for Sydney, but the story remains with Willa Pearson, youngest ever A-League goal scorer, and that beautiful interview. Perth Glory beat Canberra 1-0. The Glory broke a 4-game winless streak with a narrow win over Canberra due to a Hayley Taylor Young own goal. It was a disappointing result for Canberra, who had won their past 2, but a good win for Perth, who bounces back in a very tight Ninja A-League table. Mariners also, too, had a big win. They beat Wellington, the informed side, the Knicks they were, but the Mariners beat them 2-1. A beautiful free kick from Peter Trimis to give the Mariners the lead. The Knicks did pounce on a Mariners error at the back to equalise through Mackenzie Anthony, and then a great assist from 19-year-old Avina Prakesh sets up Tamir Levin, who scores in first half stoppage time, and that goal was the winner, with the Mariners rolling out 2-1 win over Wellington, who had a short space at the top of the table. The Melbourne Derby all ended up in a 0-0 draw, with Melbourne City, who have been stuttering a bit lately, had the better of things, but couldn't get past Courtney Newborn in goals for victory, who made 5 crucial saves. So that was a 0-0 draw. All honours shared in the Derby. In the other news, let's go to some Australian international news. Tony Vidmar steps down as under-23 Olyroos coach. It was confirmed also too the CommBank Joey's AFC Team Under-17 Asia squad for Saudi Arabia 2026. The group stage opponents have been revealed in a beautiful ceremony in Kuala Lumpur. This is the 21st edition of the tournament and will take place between May 5th and May 22nd, with the top 8 finishers qualifying for the FIFA Under-17 World Cup in Qatar in 2026 this year. So we are in Group D, which has Uzbekistan, Australia, of course, India, and DPR Korea. So very interesting draw there, Group D, with the top 8 finishers qualifying for the World Cup in a crucial campaign there, and hopefully we can have some more success in the youth tournaments. They've been playing a few warm-up games in the last few months. Also, let's have a look at how the Joeys performed last time. Joeys didn't make it out of their group in the last Asia Cup, and they were knocked out on goal difference. So we've got some work to do if we look at history, and we said how important are these tournaments, because we must get our best young players to the World Cup to perform.
Oh, yeah, look, we mentioned in our Fan Week pod about the importance of performing well in these tournaments. And yeah, you can see from the history there that obviously the Under-17 Joeys, remember that one where they were up against Japan, unfortunately conceded a late goal. They still beat Japan, but they went out on goal difference. So they were close to qualifying out of the group, but just didn't make it. But obviously the Junior Matildas having a shocker last time in that tournament. So we definitely want both of those teams to be able to progress out of the groups, and then let's hope that both of them can have successful tournaments and go to the World Cup later this year and have a really big year for our underage groups. But I noticed that at least on the Joey side, that this is an annual tournament now. So looks like both the Asian Cup and the World Cup are going to be annual tournaments. So plenty of exposure for our young players, which is going to be fantastic. But it probably even further drives home the importance of getting to these World Cups every year and be able to showcase what we can do on the world stage. All right, Lawrence Thomas hitting goals this week. Did concede 2 for the Wanderers, but made some crucial saves in that one as well. Callum, his performance for Derby. Willa Pearson, of course, youngest ever A-League women's goal scorer. Well done, Willa. Alessandro Ciccardi picked up a nice win and a clean sheet during the week. Alex Robertson for his fine performance for Cardiff City. Ethan Allegich was immense in Adelaide United's midfield last night. Maxi Burgess continues to impress for Newcastle Jets. Mackenzie Hawkesby as well for Sydney FC in their big 4-0 win over Brisbane Roar. Riley McGree for his goal and assist during the week. We didn't cover that one because we'd already spoken about it in our midweek episode, so go back and listen to that if you'd like to. Mohamed Toure, how can we leave this guy out? 5 goals in the week. Absolutely on fire, Mohamed Toure. And Peter Trimis, what a free kick that was in the Central Coast Mariners game against Wellington Phoenix in a massive win for the Mariners. Outstanding performances all round from our Australians, both home and abroad. Some big matches coming up overnight as well. Plenty of our players in action in Europe. And yeah, of course, looking ahead to the week, that clash between Sydney FC and Auckland, and then Melbourne City and MacArthur back in action for their Asian competition. So it just doesn't stop, doesn't it, Mopper?
Oh, mate, there's some massive games and exciting to watch. There'll be plenty more to report midweek. And we also will have a midweek special again, as we always do. This time we're looking at title races, as a number of teams the Australians are performing in getting to the back end of the half of the finish line, and we'll look at in Europe, UK and around the world who's title challenging and who's got a chance to lift and be champions at the end of the year. So thanks for tonight's show, and thanks for your contribution, Chief, and look forward to another midweek wrap.
Yeah, thank you, mate. As you said, we'll be back midweek to record that special episode. So look, in the meantime, thanks very much for listening tonight, and enjoy your football.
All the best.